Welcome to the inaugural episode of The Swarm, a business and technology podcast brought to you by MyKrill. I'm your host, Wallace Chase. I'm a futurist, a technology junkie, and the head of sales and development strategy for MyKrill. If you don't know MyKrill, we're a very different type of technology consulting practice, and what makes us unique is that we are obsessively focused on our clients having triumphant outcomes. Our expertise is ERP evaluation, selection, and implementation, as well as project management, project rescue, and custom applications. You can find us at mykrill.com. If you'd like to talk with us, you can navigate to our Contact Us page and let us know when you'd like to meet. With me today is one of the founding members of the consulting leadership team at MyKrill. She is the managing director of ERP domain expertise and has over 20 years of hands-on experience managing, selling, implementing, and building modern ERP solutions to streamline businesses. These processes span across every dimension of business: finance, supply chain, project management, order management, commercial, human resources disciplines, and even into legal areas as well. She is very passionate about nurturing a productive, dynamic atmosphere that motivates teams to perform beyond expectations. And it's my pleasure to introduce a true ERP industry expert and legend, Kristi Kohl. Thank you for being here, and welcome to The Swarm.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Wallace. It's very exciting to be here, and I am absolutely thrilled about being able to talk about ERP and what MyKrill can do in the world, and just in general, some of the benefits and importances of an ERP to business in general.
I love it. And this is kind of interesting because this is our very first podcast, and you're our very first guest, so you'll go down in history.
Thank you. Feeling very special right now. Thanks.
So, when I listen to podcasts, there are two trains of thought. You really get detailed and you go for this, marathon 2-hour type of podcast, Joe Rogan style interviews. But in the world of business, I tend to think that the best podcasts get to business pretty quickly and talk about pertinent issue, whatever is at hand for that day. And usually maybe 20 or 30 minutes may be all I have time to listen to. So with that in mind, we'll try to keep it around half an hour of your time. I know it's valuable, so thank you. But we'll just jump into it.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Let's go.
So an enterprise resource planning tool is for a lot of people that don't know, and maybe a lot of people do, is a singular platform that manages and integrates most every functional area of business and its processes, from, as we stated, HR to procurement, operations to finance, manufacturing to quality control. It's the beast of all softwares, right? And, sometimes it can be the most technically vast and challenging system that exists in business. So my question is, how in the world did you become an expert at this type of mammoth system? How did you become such an effective thought leader in the ERP universe?
Well, thank you. I am honored by the term expert, but that term does kind of make me a little nervous because I think I personally have a little hang up on that term. Expert to me means you know everything there is to know about something, right? But the reality is it is somebody who has enough experience in a subject matter that they are generally respected in the space. Right. So I feel a little bit better about it, but expert, I'm continually learning every single engagement I ever get involved in. I am a sponge expecting to learn more and grow more. So expert, thanks. We'll just, I don't know, continue the journey of fun, okay?
I get it. It's such a massive type of software that affects every type of business. It would be hard to say, hey, I know everything there is to know, right, about it. But in my eyes, and I know you and I've worked with you, you're the expert in the field because you know more about this than anybody that I've ever talked to.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, so a little bit of background about me. I have a super cool dad, and I'm not going to give you my entire background here, I promise. But he was one of the first generation geophysical systems developers. Wow. Okay, so he was what they called a doodle bugger, and he interpreted seismic data from ages ago, right? And I always thought, okay, the graphs that he had laid out across the pool table were super cool, and I love to play with them and color on them, but I thought, what a boring life, forget it, I'm never doing that, right? So whatever, so I head off to A&M, and I'm an Aggie, whoop. And I joined the business school, and I fell in love with some of these development programming languages classes, and I was like, hey Dad, I hate to tell you this, but I kind of like what you're doing, right? It's kind of cool. So anyway, I get out of school, and I get my first job at Texaco, and Texaco was soon thereafter bought by Huntsman. And back in the day, you could not just rip out these software systems and take a clone and stand it up and take out some data, kind of like these M&A transactions today. Not that mergers and acquisitions are easy today,
right?
But the software solutions lend to being able to replicate the system better today than what they did then. So I was presented with a very unusual and very fortunate situation where they took that IT department of 60 people, reduced it down to 5, and said, okay, this new company, you guys go find your own software environment to go run your entire business on, and you've got a designated amount of time to get it done in. Okay, clock's ticking, go. So that was cool. And at the time, I was like, okay, whatever. I was just a kid. I didn't know any better. I didn't know this was supposed to be a hard thing to do. I said, okay, next project, let's hit it.
Yeah.
And I got real fortunate to get to do basic software evaluation, full enterprise. We looked at Oracle, we looked at SAP, we looked at J.D. Edwards, we looked at Bond. I don't know how many others we looked at, but it was a very eye-opening experience for me, and I loved it.
Yeah.
So I found myself then managing the finance implementation. So I stayed focused on finance. We had somebody else leading some of the other functions. And I got to know Oracle really well. And being a young person, and I hate to tell you this because this is really going to date me, but boxes and boxes of manuals showed up in my office. And so I read them.
Wow.
Yeah. Pathetic, right? I mean, and I enjoyed it. That's the weirdest thing. So, but that is really what launched my whole base and foundation in ERP. Yeah, Oracle is fantastic, and there are now today a lot of different ERPs. Oracle's definitely not the only vendor, but they're established for generally a very similar purpose across the board.
Right.
So it was great to get started in that space, and then the journey just carries forward from there.
Yeah, I know you actually ended up working at Oracle.
I did.
Okay.
I did. So once I implemented it, then I went to go work there, and I got the opportunity to talk to a lot of different businesses and see if that ERP could fit into those businesses. So I did that, and then after my Oracle days, I went to go work at General Electric, and I did several implementations, ERP implementations for different businesses within GE. So I just kind of carried the whole theme along the way. And then again at McDermott, right, we did some really nice modern day cloud implementations at McDermott. So much fun. Yeah.
So you were really fortunate then, because the way that your career got started was almost by happenstance with what happened with the purchase of Huntsman and Texaco.
That's right.
That got you involved in the ERP process, and then every step of the way you just got deeper and deeper and more knowledgeable, building your expertise, as I say, right? And worked for some really, really prominent companies, some big companies that have enormous infrastructure and technology systems. And you're able to navigate it both from the selling point of view and from the implementation point of view. So it's pretty amazing that was your journey. And now, very briefly, tell us about what you're doing for Micro.
Okay. So along that journey, I met a lot of wonderful people, a lot of support along the way, and then several across different, employment engagements, right? So built some very strong relationships. And an opportunity came along with Micro, where it was a consulting company that is getting established, that needs an ERP leader.
Right.
So Darnell Jackson gave me a call and he said, hey, we need somebody with your background and your expertise to help carry our ERP practice within this company. We would love to have you join us. And I could not jump at it quick enough. I was very excited and very honored to get that opportunity. And so here we are.
Yeah.
And we're entering the market and helping businesses move off of Excel, move out of QuickBooks, get established, and carry their journeys forward. It's
a good segue. I have another question for you. You have seen, many different approaches to evaluating ERPs. A lot of companies get to the point in their evolution where they understand in their current state with multiple disparate systems, in-house developed mechanisms and tools, they just can't, they're not capable of effectively running all functional areas in their company longer. And, if I'm in executive leadership, right, I'm a CIO and a CEO and a chief operating officer, I'm sitting around the boardroom table and, we're talking and realizing that we need an ERP. My question, I guess, is, what is necessary for the next phase after that happens? In other words, what are the maybe top 2 or 3 things that we need to do? So we've decided we need an ERP. What now?
Yeah, I love it. Okay, so the hard part is done, right? That you've decided this is what you need, right? Sometimes that is a big journey in itself. Okay, so in this case, you're already good to go. What do you do first? You need to find somebody to help you find the right ERP for you.
Okay.
And there are hundreds of ERPs on the market. Back in the day, there were only a few. Okay, and you really had to fit your business into one of those few, and then you had to build customizations around it. Okay. Today it's a different situation. There are a lot of really smart people out there, a lot of smart businesses that have built industry-specific ERPs, market-specific ERPs, some for very large companies, some for very small companies. You have this massive plethora of opportunity ahead of you. And for someone who hasn't lived in that space, it's going to be very, it's going to make you a little worried about what do I do next, right?
It can be overwhelming, right?
Overwhelming, yeah, absolutely. So go find somebody to help you out, okay?
Number one, find somebody that can help you.
Second is make sure you work with that team to find the right one, right? So there's an ERP evaluation process that we walk businesses through, right? Number one is absolutely get to know that company. Some people have the perspective that, a business is a business. It is the same across. Everybody thinks they're special, but they're actually just a business. Well, okay, I get that, but everybody has their special thing, right? And if you don't understand what is that business's special thing, you're going to miss it. And then you're setting yourself up for risk. And so you got to find somebody who is willing to take the time to understand who you are, what is your special thing, what sets you apart, and how can a system help support your special thing. Okay? Yeah. So the next thing is that you need to set up what I call the 3-legged stool.
Okay. Tell me about that.
Really understand what is your scope. What is the problem within your company that you're trying to fix? Why are you moving to an ERP? Stay focused. Keep your core around that. Define your scope of what you plan to implement. Are you fixing finance? Are you fixing supply chain? Do you need to fix both? How's fabrication? How's manufacturing going? How's your inventory management? Do they all speak to each other? So the scope can carry on, but get it really rigidly defined, because scope creep is a beast to try to control.
Right, and that gets expensive when you're paying a consultant to do all of that.
Exactly.
Right, you want it to be tight, right?
Let it be tight, get your scope defined. The second is timeline. How long do you have to do the implementation? Okay. You have to look at what's going on within your company, right? Do you have projects that are about to kick off? Do you have projects that are about to slow down? Are you engaging in another region of the globe, or are you consolidating and coming back home together again, right? So there are a lot of economics you need to look at as far as timing goes, both inside your company and outside your company. So how long do you have? And resources.
Yeah.
You got to make sure you put the right kind of resources, and I mean your team, okay? Resources also is funding, right? So through your evaluation process, you'll work out the right ERP appropriate for your budget. So I got resources financially, you got to do that obviously, but in this case I'm talking about the team. So ensuring that you have the right folks on the team in order to support the effort is absolutely critical. So those are what I would say would be the top three. Get the right team to help you, get the right ERP selected, and then stand up your three-legged stool.
I like that, the three-legged stool. I think that could probably be used in a lot of project management scenarios, right? Especially one as big and as vast and as all-encompassing as an ERP implementation. It kind of leads me to my next question, actually, because I have been reading a lot about ERPs in preparation for our talk today. And one expert in the field that I came across was a gentleman by the name of Rick Carlton. He's a contributing editor for ERP Focus magazine. And it's a hard statistic to wrap my mind around because in my mind, ERPs are very expensive and have such a huge impact, and they're flexible for the most part, and they do so many different things. But he says that about 60% of all ERP implementations fail, and 80% of the users are dissatisfied with their ERP implementation. So it's kind of mind-boggling. And I know when I mentioned that statistic to you earlier, you had said you hate that it's that way. But whether it's a tier 1, a tier 2, a best of breed, whatever it is, it just doesn't seem to matter. They all have sort of this 50-60% failure rate. So my question is, why do so many implementations fail? What can you tell our listeners that will help them sidestep some of these pitfalls?
Yeah, those numbers are devastating to me. I mean, seriously devastating to me to hear about these statistics and the repeatability of it. I cannot fathom the courage it takes a company to make the decision to go implement, the resources it takes to do the implementation, and the trust that you're putting in the team to go do that, just to have it labeled as a failure, air quotes, labeled as a failure, right? So, it just breaks my heart, really. But there are ways to alleviate that label of failure, okay? Goes back to your three-legged stool, right? What is your scope? What is your timeline? What are your resources? And what are your goals, right? As your project charter from the very beginning, a very basic, project management 101, define your goals for this project. Yes, it's a very big project, but it has to have goals. That becomes your North Star, right? What am I doing it all for anyway, right? Keep your focus on what are your goals, what are the benefits you're expecting to get out of this ERP, and work to that, right? And don't get distracted. So a minute ago I mentioned scope creep. Scope creep will significantly distract you from your North Star focus.
Right.
So keep that in mind. Keep your prioritization on your goals. Moral of the story is everyone that is part of that team and involved needs to agree on the scope, because once it's over, if somebody else who has a very loud mouth decides that their scope wasn't included and they start complaining about it, that is where the air quote fail can come from, right? It's rumor, it's opinion, whether it actually was a failure or not. If you keep your measurement of your benefits and your achievement of those benefits, you can always combat the whiny voice in the back of the room.
And say, hey, look, let's keep our focus on the goal. I hear you, I understand. And it kind of comes back to a conversation that we had earlier in the week about how the unspoken element of a successful project is really people. And their either rejection or embracing of the change culturally, not just necessarily what they have to do in a keystroke manner, how they're actually doing their job and it functions, but whether or not they embrace it and enjoy it and approach it with a positive attitude.
Right. Yeah. And I think that was one of the comments I mentioned was about finding the naysayer in the group and leaning into the naysayer, right? If there's someone that is a detractor, you need to spend time with that person and understand what has them bothered. What are they upset about? Do they want to be a bigger part of the solution? And how can you wrap some energy and enthusiasm and positive outlook around that person so that you bring them into the fold and they stop working against you? So people on the team are so critical, but then those people that are not on the team are just as critical, right?
They can come from somewhere deep within the department, but they have some sort of influence over the team, and the negativity can start to infect the whole project, right?
I would say another reason for failure would be because of business process changes. So technology has moved really, really fast, right? We have gained tremendous advancement in the ability to technically stand up an ERP. Most of them are in the cloud now, and you can just, I don't want to say this figuratively, but hit a button and next thing you know, you have an instance that is available for you to start working in, right? So the challenge of infrastructure is way less in an ERP project today than what it once was, okay? So what happens then is we say, hey, we can roll this ERP out in no time, right? Lickety split, we're good to go. But the business doesn't understand yet how to use it. So spending the right amount of time with the business, making sure that they understand what they do today is different than what they're gonna do tomorrow. However, the overarching process may be very similar. That product in the end is gonna be the same, just the path to get to that product is going to be slightly different. So you have to spend the right amount of time with the business for them to be able to embrace and understand, adopt, and carry forward this new business process. And I think oftentimes we try to move so fast because we can, that we move technically faster than what a business is really able to keep up with, because they're doing their full-time job at the same time, right?
You're trying to build an airplane while it's flying, right? Or rebuild it.
And that is going to cause some problems, right? Yeah.
So it kind of lends itself to the idea of, how do you create an environment in which an ERP implementation is successful? And I think a lot of experts would say you probably need to find an outside agency to help with that, right? And I think it's a pretty common practice, even with very, very large multi-billion-dollar companies, to seek assistance and expertise to help them with these types of enormous projects. So my last question, what are the top 3 or 4 things that a company that has made the decision to purchase and utilize an ERP look for when evaluating not the ERP, but a company, an agency, a practice, or a consulting company that can help them evaluate and then select and then implement the ERP? So
first thing first is find the right partner. Finding that right partner, you need to find somebody who cares about your business. Somebody who, yes, they need to be experienced in the industry. Yes, they need to be experienced in the market and the size of business that you are in. But overall, they need to really care and dig in to what your business actually is. There's always something special. There's always a little golden nugget that the ERP may not be able to support. And you need to know that early so that you can plan for it. It doesn't mean you don't do ERP because of it. It just means you know about it and you can plan for it. Identifying those gaps and those challenges and those issues, identifying those early is a very, very good thing to do.
So what does that look like practically, right? If someone says, hey, I want to use this consulting practice to help me, and I want to know that they care, and I want to know that they're looking for all the blind spots. Is it meetings? Is it phone calls? Is it doing some deep discovery with some of the leadership of the divisions? How would you know that the company really does care and they wants to understand the business before they just start implementing?
First, they're going to ask you too many questions.
Okay.
All right? They're going to ask you way too many. They're going to take too much of your time.
Right.
Because they need to understand. What we do is we hold discovery workshops.
Okay.
And the best way to hold a discovery workshop is to get everybody in the room together and get everybody to talk. I love that giant workshop thing. The reality is you're going to have people with various personalities inside that room. So you will hear the folks that are willing to speak up and are a little, outgoing kind of folks. You're going to hear that and you're going to think that is what this business is all about. So while I love that kind of giant workshop, it's greatly effective, but you're not done, right? You really need to have one-on-one or function by function focused workshops where you have a little smaller group and you get the inclusiveness across all the different functions and the different levels of the organization involved in this discovery.
Right.
And by the time you do that, the leadership is going to be like, come on, what are you guys doing? Let's move on with this.
Let's start this already.
Isn't it time to go live?
Yeah.
What's up? So the reality is the more time you spend early and up front, the better the information is that you have to work with and the faster you find your trouble spots. Every ERP has a trouble spot. Most ERPs are going to hit your business need maybe 80%. Okay, how do you find that 20%? How are you going to address that 20%? Are you going to assume it's going to be a manual adjustment, or is it going to be a customization, or like what should it be? You got to give yourself time to get to know and understand that. So look for somebody who cares about your company. Look for somebody who's going to ask a million questions. I would also look for somebody who says they are ERP agnostic, because that means they got no skin in the game when it comes to picking an ERP, that they really want to get the right one for you. And there's so many to choose from these days, which is a wonderful thing to have, but it's also, it's a blessing and a curse kind of thing, right?
Right.
So you can have paralysis by analysis, right? If you're not careful. So that's why you got to find somebody who understands the environment and knows what is available and can take the blinders off and be very open about what the options are. Okay. I would also say, I already talked about really finding the gaps. Those are important. And then modern technology, somebody who gets modern technology, like I love the cloud. The whole cloud thing is amazing and beautiful because your updates and your improvement and your releases that are going to come out by the vendor in the cloud, if you have very limited customizations, you can accept those super quick. You don't have this big implement the ERP and then 5 years later spend another couple $1 million re-implementing
on the updates.
So those days are long gone. So you got to find a partner who understands that and understands the benefits and the importance of that. And then obviously you need to find somebody with years and years of experience, right? So,
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think this has been a wonderful discussion. We're coming up on right at about 30 minutes, so I think this is a good place to wrap. I am so pleased that you were my first guest on the Swarm podcast, a business and technology podcast sponsored by Micrill. This has been wonderful and amazing, so thank you for being here. You can contact Micrill at micrill.com, navigate to our Contact Us page, and let us know when you'd like to visit.